Hey everybody! Did you know on PC Part Picker there are over 65 B550 motherboards to choose from compared to only 27 B450 motherboards? This large number of options can make buying a B550 motherboard rather difficult. There's just so much to consider when looking at a motherboard in terms of what you're getting for your money. Does it have Wi-Fi? Are there 2 or 4 RAM slots? How many USB ports are there on the rear I/O, and is one of them USB Type-C? Is there an internal USB Type-C header so you can take advantage of that if your case has one? What's the power delivery and VRM cooling solution like? How many M.2 slots are there? And the list can go on and on and on. However, if you know how much you can spend and what features you want, you'll be able to quickly narrow your options and find the motherboard that best suits your needs and is within your budget. When it comes to ASUS ROG line of products, these are both loaded with features and also command a price premium, occupying the higher end of the pricing spectrum even for their mid-tier products. This usually means spending around $200. However, there is a sub $200 ROG product, and this is it. Today I'm going to talk about the ASUS ROG Strix B550-F gaming motherboard. Welcome to the middle of nowhere. While I wouldn't necessarily call the B550-F Gaming's $178 price tag inexpensive, it's still affordable, and this price makes it very competitive with other available options in the $169 to $189 price range. At the time of this video, there are about 13 motherboards to choose from at that range, including the Wi-Fi version of this Strix motherboard. With so many similarly priced options, why did I choose the B550-F Gaming? The answer to that is actually rather simple. I bought it used on eBay for under $114 or 36% off its retail price. While buying used carries a risk, I've already tested the motherboard and it works. Having said that, I was not fully immune to the risk as the motherboard didn't come with cooler mounting brackets or M.2 standoffs and screws, both of which I had to replace. Fortunately, I spoke with the seller and they gave me a partial refund which covered the cost to replace those missing parts. While not a flawless experience, this purchase turned out to be positive in the end. Why am I telling you the how and where of my purchase? The answer to that is also easy, so you can save money. Right now, if you're buying parts for a PC build, you've probably noticed the increase in prices for nearly every component, not just GPUs. Because of this, it's become important to look beyond normal shopping channels like Amazon, Newegg, or B&H to get the best price. Instead, go to eBay, Craigslist, Facebook, or another marketplace to see if you can save money on parts. There's a flood of stock for certain components right now, and this is mainly due to retailers like Newegg bundling motherboards, power supplies, RAM, and other components with the hard-to-find GPUs. Because people are forced to buy both parts, many are selling the components they don't want to recoup their costs. This has resulted in a higher supply of those unwanted items and a chance to save a lot of money for those who would buy them. In fact, this B550-F here is actually the second motherboard I bought off eBay for significantly less than if I had bought it through Newegg or Amazon for new. The other motherboard being a brand new Gigabyte B550 Aorus Pro AC, and I saved 50% or $100 off MSRP. I'll also be doing an overview video on that motherboard as well, so don't miss out by getting subscribed. Alright, enough of me babbling, let's go over the ASUS ROG Strix B550-F Gaming. Before we open the box for the ROG Strix B550-F Gaming, let's have a quick look at it first. The packaging keeps the familiar mixture of red and black present in all ROG products, along with adding some pastels that mark it as a Strix model. The first thing I notice on the box is the AMD Ryzen 5000X Desktop Ready sticker. This sticker's presence means I don't need to update the BIOS prior to inserting a 5000 series CPU. This is fantastic as it's just one less thing I have to worry about. Hopefully we can expect more and more motherboards to have updated BIOSes as the year progresses. Additional information on the front includes chipset model, PCIe 4.0 support, Ryzen 3000 series support, and ASUS proprietary Aura and GameFirst software. Aura is ASUS RGB software and GameFirst helps optimize network speeds for your online games. The sides lack any product information except for part and serial number, which you'll need when you register the motherboard for warranty support, and on the back you'll find loads of information. When you first open the box, you'll see the motherboard in an anti-static bag. Upon taking the motherboard out and removing the cardboard, you'll see what is supposed to be included in the box. A user manual, 6 SATA 3 or 6 gigabit per second cables, a coaster that doubles as a driver disc, a cable tie pack, one ARGB extension cable. So this is your standard 3-pin RGB to a weird looking 3-pin. This is probably something you could hook into a Corsair product. Some stickers, a lovely thank you card, and a specification update notification for AMD processors. This is essentially telling you what is compatible with this motherboard. For me, the CPU backplate was loose in the box, but I did receive everything else other than the M.2 SSD screw package and M.2 rubber package, and I'm not exactly sure what an M.2 rubber package even is. As previously mentioned, I did replace the missing bits, and for those curious, here's what the M.2 standoff replacement kit looks like. It costs less than $6 and has everything I need to mount an M.2 drive on this board. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in learning more about it. As for looks, the motherboard is very clean. It's almost all black with one RGB lighting zone on the rear I/O shroud where only the ROG eye lights up. The text on the motherboard is minimal and serves to reinforce the Strix branding. While the text is bordered by pink lines, they don't stand out overly much and will easily blend in when your PC is fully assembled. The backside of the motherboard has a gray strip with Republic of Gamers printed on it in English and a couple of other languages, as well as the ROG logo. There are no backside M.2 slots or anything else of note other than the screws for the chipset and power delivery heatsinks and rear I/O shroud. You'll also get a better view of the audio line shielding, which blocks electromagnetic interference from the motherboard or add-ons to provide cleaner audio. Overall, the ROG Strix B550-F Gaming has an unobtrusive design and comes with a decent number of accessories. I'm particularly happy ASUS included a full manual. While it isn't a super inconvenience to go online and look at it on the phone or tablet, I like having a printed manual within reach. Moving on, let's see what onboard features the Strix B550-F Gaming has. The ASUS ROG Strix B550-F Gaming is an ATX motherboard and measures 305mm by 244mm, or 12 inches by 9.6 inches for my American friends. It has a 6-layer PCB to help with rigidity and aid in heat dissipation around the VRMs. The motherboard supports 5000 and 3000 series CPUs as well as 4000G series CPUs. It does not seem to support, at least according to ASUS's website, 3000G series CPUs or 2000 or 1000 series. I'm unsure if there will be support for 5000G series CPUs, but I bet there will once those are out and sold at retail, and you'll probably just need a BIOS update to be able to use them. You'll find 4 slots for your memory on the B550F with dual channel support, and you can install up to 128GB of RAM should you need that ludicrous amount. The B550F also supports a wide variety of RAM speeds. However, from the price to performance standpoint, I still recommend sticking with DDR4, 3600, CL14, or 16 RAM. Or if you can find it at a good price and have a 5000 series CPU, go for DDR4, 3866, or 4000 speed RAM. Keep in mind the faster speed RAM tends to not only be more expensive, but also have slower cache latency timings, thus erasing any advantage those faster speeds might provide. On a side note, if you have only one RAM stick, insert it into slot B2 or the second slot away from the CPU. If you're using 2 sticks of RAM, install them into slots B2 and A2 or the second and fourth slots when going away from the CPU to take advantage of dual channel speeds. I highly recommend getting at least a 2-stick RAM kit over a single stick to take advantage of the performance increase dual channel mode provides. When it comes to PCIe support, you'll find a total of 5 slots on the Strix B550-F Gaming. The top slot is by 16 in speed and length and it's for your graphics card. If you're using a Ryzen 3000 or 5000 series CPU, you'll be able to take advantage of the Gen 4 PCIe speeds these CPUs provide. Using a Ryzen 4000G or 5000G series CPU will restrict you to PCIe 3.0 speeds. This slot also features ASUS's Safe Slot technology, which is a metal reinforcement to prevent heavier GPUs from sagging or even breaking the PCIe slot. The second 16-length slot is by 4 in speed. Finally, you'll find 3 PCIe 3.0 by 1 length and speed slots on this motherboard, and you can use these to add a Wi-Fi card or a capture card if you're into streaming or some other PCIe device. Do note the 3 PCIe by 1 slots and PCIe by 16 by 4 slot all share the same bandwidth. So if you put a card into one of those by 1 slots, that by 16 length slot effectively becomes a by 1 speed instead of 4 slot. I'm unsure if you can reduce to by 3 or by 2 if you only use 1 or 2 of those by 1 slots. You'll find 2 4-pin 12V RGB headers and 1 3-pin 5V ARGB header at the top and bottom of the B550-F Gaming motherboard. I would have liked to have seen 2 ARGB headers instead of just 1, and if this meant removing one of those 4-pin RGB headers, then so be it. As previously mentioned, there is one zone of lighting on the motherboard, and that's the ROG logo over the rear I/O. Both the motherboard lighting and any RGB strips or fans connected to the motherboard can be controlled using ASUS's AuraSync software that is embedded in their Armory Crate program. You'll find a total of 6 4-pin PWM fan headers on this motherboard, 3 of which are dedicated to chassis fans. The remaining 4-pin headers are for your CPU cooler, a CPU optional header, and an AIO pump header. The I/O pump connector is rather conveniently located by the rear chassis fan header, so you shouldn't have to worry too much about routing the cable should you use an I/O water cooler. Need to install a load of storage devices? This motherboard won't leave you short. There are 6 SATA 3 6 gigabit per second ports and 2 M.2 slots. The top M.2 slot can operate at PCIe 4.0 by 4 speeds should you have a Ryzen 5000 or 3000 series CPU. Other CPUs will operate at PCIe 3.0 by 4 speeds. The bottom slot only runs at PCIe 3.0 speeds. Both M.2 slots also have heat sinks to help keep your drive temperatures down, and both support drive lengths of 42, 60, 80, and 110 millimeters. Both slots also support SATA 3 M.2 drives. For those looking to set up a RAID array, there is support for RAID 0, 1, or 10 with your M.2 or SATA storage devices. Do be aware if you use the bottom M.2 socket, SATA ports 5 and 6 become disabled. These are the ports located towards the bottom of the motherboard. I'm not sure of the reasons why, but I'll assume there aren't enough lanes from the chipset to have everything working. I don't think you should view this as a negative either, but more as a choice. Either take advantage of those fast NVMe drive speeds and use the bottom M.2 slot, or have 2 more SATA devices connected to your PC. Honestly, you may not even miss those 2 bottom SATA ports, as the 4 ought to be enough even if you use an internal optical drive or card reader. When it comes to internal I/O, the B550-F has enough options for most mainstream users, but not nearly as many as you might find on a more expensive motherboard such as the ASUS 𝐓𝐢𝐬𝐬 and an X570 motherboard that also costs over twice as much. You'll find the standard 24-pin ATX main power in the usual spot at the side of the motherboard, and the 8-pin ATX 12-volt power and 4-pin supplemental CPU power connectors at the top left. There are also loads of headers for peripherals, monitoring, and for connecting the front I/O of your case. As I've stated in my other motherboard videos, you need to plug your 8-pin CPU power connector, so don't worry if your power supply doesn't have a second 4+4 connector. The 4-pin is optional and is only really needed if you're overclocking or have a power-hungry CPU. Having said that, it won't hurt to plug your PSU cable into this 4-pin header if you have it available. There are 2 internal USB 2.0 headers at the bottom of the motherboard and 1 USB 3.2 Gen 1 header on the side below the 24-pin connector. According to the manual, each USB 2.0 header allows for 2 additional USB 2.0 ports. There is no internal USB Type-C header on the B550F Gaming, so you may want to consider a different motherboard if your PC case has a Type-C port and you want to make use of it. Due to the bulkiness of the USB 3.2 Gen 1 cable, I always recommend looking into a low-profile adapter, as this makes cable management easier and will also make your PC build cleaner looking. I put a link to one in the description below. The bottom of the motherboard is home to the majority of the front panel connectors. Starting on the left is the front audio header for your case mic and headphone jacks with support for HD audio. Next to that is the Thunderbolt header. This is an interesting inclusion for a motherboard that seems to be mostly targeted at gamers and is also more of a budget option within the Strix lineup. However, if you do need fast storage, you can take advantage of the speeds Thunderbolt offers. You'll use this header should you purchase a Thunderbolt add-in card like ASUS's Thunderbolt EX3. Simply plug a cable from the card to the motherboard connector and you're off to the races. Next to the RGB and ARGB headers, which I already covered, is the Clear CMOS header. There's no button on the B550F, so if you need to clear the CMOS, turn your PC off first, and then bridge the 2 pins by touching a screwdriver to them. You'll probably need to hold it there for about a good 10 seconds. Next to that is a thermal sensor header. You can plug in a thermal sensor to this to better monitor temperatures of certain areas on your motherboard or other components. If you're water cooling, you can also plug a thermal sensor that is connected to a plug you then screw into your pump. On the very right side of the board is the front panel header. Here you can plug in any provided front panel cables from your case, such as the power or reset buttons, hard drive activity light, etc. For those who like to plug in an internal speaker to hear the beeps of your system, you're in luck. ASUS put the speaker header to the right of the front panel connector. As with many of the B550 motherboards, you won't find any onboard power, reset, or clear CMOS buttons on the Strix B550F Gaming, or on the rear I/O even. I still find the absence of such quality of life features, which to me should be a standard for any motherboard that costs $150 or more, both interesting and frustrating. Not including these buttons is a cost-saving measure, sure, but when you look at the price, where are those savings? These motherboards aren't cheap, especially when compared to their B450 counterparts, which are very similar minus the PCIe 4.0 compatibility. You'd think the absence of these features would make B550 motherboards cost even less than they do, but they aren't. And this is disconcerting to me. This should serve as further motivation to look for these motherboards on eBay or other secondary markets where you can possibly find them new for 30 to 50% off MSRP. Getting such a good discount makes the price compared to features included much more palatable when looking at a B550 motherboard. While there is no Q code reader on the ROG Strix B550-F Gaming, it does have 4 easy-to-read LED lights for both monitoring and troubleshooting your PC. These are located on the side of the motherboard above the 24-pin connector. The boot LED is yellow-green, while the VGA is white, CPU is red, and DRAM is yellow. If you can't boot to your OS, or even if you can, and one of these LEDs remains lit, something is wrong. Use this visual indicator as a troubleshooting starting point. For example, if your RAM isn't fully seated, the RAM LED will stay lit, and you won't get any further into the boot process until you fix it. Overall, the ROG Strix B550-F Gaming has plenty of internal I/O that will suffice for the majority of PC builders. Having said that, if you need to take advantage of hardware encryption a trusted platform module will bring, you'll need to look for a different motherboard, as the B550-F does not have a TPM connector. One of the things ASUS prides itself on is the audio solutions it provides for its motherboards, be they mid-range tough gaming, upper mid-range Strix, or their high-end crosshair hero boards. The B550-F Gaming includes Supreme FX 7.1 channel high-definition audio using the 𝐓𝐢𝐤𝐬𝐤 codec. According to the product site and manual, this codec comes loaded with a bunch of features such as impedance sense for front and rear headphone outputs, 120 dB SNR stereo playback output, and 113 dB SNR recording input, support for 32-bit 192 kHz playback, although this is not supported for 8-channel playback due to bandwidth limitations, dual op amps which let you drive headphones with an impedance range of 32 to 600 ohms. If you're an audiophile or just have expensive headphones that require a beefy amplifier to drive them, the dual op amps on the motherboard will help make sure you can use your preferred headphones. The motherboard also has 2 forms of shielding to make sure no noise interferes with your listening experience. There's the Supreme FX shielding, or the line you see on the motherboard to separate audio components from the rest of the motherboard, again to limit that interference, and there's also an audio cover which acts as a shield against interference. ASUS is also using Japanese audio capacitors on the motherboard. Both the shielding and cover act as a barrier to make sure the other motherboard components do not interfere with your listening experience, so it's cleaner, meaning there's a reduction in or absence of noise. On the software side of things, ASUS Sonic Studio 3 will let you further tweak your listening experience, as well as AI noise cancelling, which will help limit unwanted noise such as keyboard clicks when you're streaming. And then there's DTS Sound Unbound, which provides 3D spatial technology for supported games. So if you hear footsteps and they're supposed to be coming from behind you, they will sound like they're coming from that direction. While I definitely like the added feature of the AI noise cancelling for my microphone to eliminate background noise as well as keyboard clicks, this isn't an easy thing to just set up. So I've gone ahead and included the support FAQ from ASUS website as a link in the description below. Hopefully this will help some of you. It's caused me a little bit of confusion with my ASUS Dark Hero board, and it's actually interfered with being able to use Discord when that service is active. So yeah, so hopefully this FAQ will help you if you're going to use it. The ROG Strix B550-F Gaming has plenty of ports on the rear I/O to satisfy the heaviest of peripheral users. One of the first things you'll notice is the integrated I/O shield. I love this feature and wish it was standard for all motherboards regardless of price. At the top is the BIOS Flashback button. This allows you to update the BIOS without having a CPU installed. In fact, to be able to update your BIOS with this button, you have to make sure that you don't have a CPU or RAM installed into your motherboard. You essentially just need to plug in the 24-pin cable and turn on your PSU, insert a USB stick that has the BIOS, and just press the button and wait for it to do its thing. Of course, that's a very high-level overview of the process, so do consult the manual to be able to accurately perform the BIOS flashback. There are a total of 8 USB ports on the B550-F Gaming. 2 of them are USB 2.0 ports, there are then 4 USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, and finally there are 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, 1 Type A and 1 Type C. I really love that there are 8 USB ports, again because I'm peripheral heavy, but this is really great to see. A lot of motherboards around this price point might skip out on USB ports in the rear I/O. Of course, a lack of USB ports can always be overcome by a hub. You'll find a single 2.5 gigabit per second Ethernet port that uses Intel's i225-V solution. If you're using a CPU with integrated graphics, you'll be able to make use of the Display 1.2 port or HDMI 2.1 port, the latter of which can display 4K resolution at 60 Hz. Finally, we come to the rear audio, and as previously mentioned, the B550-F uses the Supreme FX S1220A codec. You'll find 5 audio inputs and 1 optical SPDIF out. With these outputs, you'll be able to set up 2, 4, 5.1, or 7.1 channel sound, and you can see how to do this in the manual. If you plan on keeping things simple and will only be plugging in headphones and a microphone, use the lime and pink jacks respectively. Finally, let's talk about the power delivery for the ROG Strix B550-F gaming motherboard. It sports a 14-phase or 12+2 power delivery and uses 2 heat sinks to cool the VRMs. These heat sinks are not connected with a heat pipe and cool their respective parts separately. According to an AnandTech article, the cooling solution ASUS provides is efficient and keeps the VRMs cool. As such, should you want to overclock, your temps won't skyrocket. However, you may also want to consider the more expensive ROG Strix B550E gaming motherboard, as it has a 14+2 power design. And that about covers it. The ASUS ROG Strix B550F gaming motherboard is a fairly affordable choice in a crowded field, and the features it provides for the cost will satisfy most PC builders. It comes with a packed rear I/O, including a BIOS flashback button and loads of USB ports, which I always love to see. It has a feature-full audio solution, and I greatly appreciate the printed manual. Having said all this, I do urge you to look at the motherboard options available to you within that $169 to $189 price range. Because there are so many choices positioned around the B550F, you might end up finding a motherboard that is similarly spec'd or offers a feature the Strix doesn't for either a little bit less money or only a little bit more. Choice is good, so keep your options open. And that's all I have to say about the ASUS ROG Strix B550F gaming motherboard. Stay tuned for part 2 where I go over the BIOS. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button and share any questions or comments you have down below. You can show your support for the channel by clicking subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification icon so you don't miss out on any future content. Your support and feedback are greatly appreciated. I put a link to the B550F gaming motherboard in the description for you to check out, as well as some of the other ASUS B550 Strix options. I'm Seth, and I'll see you next time in the middle of nowhere.